pay a particular tribute to Elaine, who's been, round of applause. Elaine has been absolutely brilliant in organising this event. She's been tying everything together, she's been nudging people, she's been ringing me, texting me, have you done this, have you done that?
Nothing like that.
But no, she's been really good, making sure everything's been covered, and very grateful for that, so thank you, Elaine. I also want to thank the Butt Lane Locality Action Partnership, which I'm chair of. They have actually funded today's event for the enjoyment of everyone in Kidsgrove. And so I'm going to finish and just say, let us remember today and use it as an opportunity to pay tribute to the great men and women of this country that have served in all conflicts and continue to serve in conflict. And we thank them for their sacrifices. I don't know if the council or Dylan would like to, the mayor of Kidsgrove would like to come and say a few words. Thank you very much.
Morning, I won't keep you all long. I just want to thank everybody for coming and thank the Writers Group and Kyle for pulling this together. I mean, I don't think people understand just how much work goes into pulling something like this together, and I mean, I know it's been months and months, we were discussing this last year, weren't we? And it's such a massive thing, and I just hope that many people come and see it, and please do all enjoy the day.
Can I draw your attention to the model of the trenches at the back of the room there? It really is absolutely stupendous. Please have a good look at it during the course of the day. And also the paintings that were donated to us by Paul Ballard, who is a painter who donates part of the results of his sales to a charity. Again, the information is all on the table, where we're hoping that you're going to be able to put some money into our charity collection bucket. I'm now going to ask Philip, our local historian, if he'll talk to us about Kidsgrove and the First World War.
And as their managers complained, didn't always turn up for work. Mr. Allott, picked portrait of whom is out there in the hall, manager of the Birching Wood, spoke in this very hall on that thing, and said that though he tried to keep the wheels going at Birching Wood with what men there were left, he added he would also ask the men at the colliery to attend to their work as often as possible, which implies at least some were putting their all into the war effort. Once conscription was introduced, after the first flush of volunteering had died down, and casual enlists began to appear in the Sentinel, conscription was introduced. And so a local tribunal was set up to hear local men who didn't wish to go to fight. Nationally, of course, we tend to think all these as principled pacifists, who had a strong moral objection to fighting. But in fact, they were a tiny proportion of the cases heard. Often, the men were or thought themselves to be essential to home industries, such as a young male fustian worker who repaired the girls' fustian knives when they became blunt. He argued that if he left for war, 30 to 50 women would be thrown out of employment. That was his case. They told him to train someone else up quick, and then off he went. A 28-year-old who ran a pub was worried about what would happen to his infirm mother and 2 sisters who depended on him. If he went, there was no one else to take over. Few of these cases got more than a delay in being called up, as there was always on this panel a military representative present, and he could point out that, as in fact he did on one occasion, the place for a youth of 19 years is in the army. Not that life in Kidsgrove was all that rosy. There was a blackout, people kept running into lampposts, so they had to paint them white. A Zeppelin raid in November 1916, which caused panic but not much damage. There were shortages of food and fuel. Childhood epidemics raced through the local schools, the children on a poorer diet were more liable to diseases that were prone. Boys were required to leave school early to fill up work shortages. The head of St Thomas's Boys' Schools across the road reported in November 1917, for example, that he'd been able to provide 78 out of the 96 boys required. And those who remained in school began to learn practical skills like woodworking and gardening, the government suddenly realising these might be necessary and useful. And the realisation that the supply of healthy children was nationally necessary also produced a growing emphasis on child welfare. In fact, July 1917, a century ago, the film Motherhood was shown in this hall as part of National Baby Week. I wonder if a copy of that early silent propaganda film still exists. Would have been wonderful to show it today, wouldn't it? The war ended for Kidsgrove and North Staffordshire as a relief, but it didn't end with much jubilation. For a start, in January 18 there was the terrible mini-mit explosion, and the whole of that year was also marked by a fatal flu epidemic, which hit Kidsgrove as it did everywhere else. Schools had to be closed in Kidsgrove in July, and from the start of November all the way through to Christmas. An unprecedented 28 deaths occurred that year because of influenza. Not only that, the deadly toll of war deaths continued up to and beyond the armistice. There was one man who died on the 30th of October who'd worked throughout the war, and he was killed on the 30th of October. And you think, oh, the irony of that. But there. Though there was rejoicing the conflict was over, the mood remained sombre. Kidsgrove Council were debating in December 1918 whether to set up a voluntary centre for disabled soldiers. And the Kidsgrove miners, as they were discharged from the army, were wondering what the future would hold for them in the post-war world. Thank you.
By using the experiences of two of my aunts to tell you how the war affected people differently. This is a tale of two sisters. Mary was 22 when war broke out in 1914. She worked as a nanny to a businessman's family. When the men joined the army, women were drafted into factories to take their place. Mary went to work in a munitions factory, making bullets and bombs to equip the soldiers. The dirt and noise in the factory created a very different environment from the peaceful home where Mary had looked after two toddlers and a tiny baby. She found it very hard to get used to. Mary's young man, George, enlisted at the outbreak of war. How did she feel about this? Proud that he volunteered to fight for his country, but there was fear too. Would he be safe? Would he return? In the event, he did not. His parents received the dreaded letter early in the war. The loss of her sweetheart had a profound effect on Mary. Never an outgoing person, she withdrew into her shell. It seems no one could take George's place, because she never married. Mary had friends who also remained spinsters. This was the fate of many women of her generation. Their hopes and dreams buried in some corner of a foreign field. I'm sorry, but it was my aunt and it was upset me. Annie was Mary's sister, but the two were different as chalk and cheese. Annie was an extrovert. She took life by the horns and made it do her will. A 17-year-old at the start of the war, She could have been directed into factory work. That wasn't what she wanted. Annie and her friend Elsie tried to join the army. Instead, they were directed to work on the overhead railway near to their Liverpool home. They filled positions left vacant by enlisted men. Railways all over the country were busy transporting men and equipment to army barracks and to ports. Annie worked in the ticket office at one of the stations in the thick of the action, and she loved it. She became friendly with a young policeman whose beat included her station. He'd served in the army, was wounded, and although unfit for active service, he was accepted in the police force. In time, Annie and her policeman married. The war separated some couples forever, but it brought Annie and her husband together. Two completely different outcomes for two people in the same family.
One aspect, there were lots of things, rats and all sorts of things. I chose mud. Mud, slippery and slimy, sucking at everything it touches. Mud in mouth, ears and clogging nose, fingernails sludge brittle. Mud washing into boots, boot laces sticking together, socks a token barrier. Mud soaking into uniforms, heavy, uncomfortable wear, and food, bitter and brittle. Mud coating guns, guns to provide survival, they thought. Mud drowning, but not in clear, cool water. Bitter, bitter passing.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. I chose to write about poppies because I'm a keen gardener. And when I look at poppies, which are such a fragile flower, it seemed amazing to me that they represented something, such a strong feeling, really. I've called it Flanders poppies. Deep underdone, this suffering earth, blasted by shells, seamed with trenches, tramped over by boots, punctuated by polluted pools and jagged tree stumps, scribbled on by tangles of barbed wire. And yet, below the sound and fury, seas stirred. The air is rent by the booming of guns, the unending cacophony of cannons, sky ripped by explosions of white light. In the silence of nightfall, when armaments rest, cries of the wounded in no man's land travel, unravel, sleep. And yet, green shoots appear, spear the chaos. It is another world, the world of war. Every sign of humanity, roads, woodland, villages, just swept away, deleted, leaving behind a broad sward of murdered nature, shrouded in a gaseous smoke, peopled by anonymous moving shapes, appearing and disappearing. And yet, slender stems stretch towards the light. Men fight and die in this landscape, fight and live in this landscape, scarred visibly and invisibly. Some remain part of this soil forever. others across their marker. Others return home, silent, remembering, and yet, flower buds open, papery petals unfurl, scarlet testimony to lives lost and the earth from which they spring. They dance their red dance of defiance, defiance towards destruction, Flanders poppies. Thank you.
This next piece of work is written by Jan Foley. This story is about my great-uncle Chris, who was the favourite younger brother of my maternal grandmother, Nellie Bott. Henry Christopher Dale was born in 1897 in Alsager to parents George and Amelia Dale. His father, originally a miner, was at this time an agricultural labourer. In later years, he became a drayman to an ale and porter merchant, but was a coal carter by 1911. The family moved several times in Alsager, eventually settling in Shady Grove by 1911. By the time of the census of that year, Chris, now 14, was employed as a farmer's servant. However, by the outbreak of war, he was working as a blacksmith's striker. On the 28th of December, 1914, he enlisted as Christopher Dale with the North Staffordshire Regiment in Tunstall, service number 16132. He was recorded as being 5 foot 6 inches tall, chest 36 inches, dark hair, blue eyes, with a fresh complexion. Chris embarked for France on the 5th of May 1915 from Devonport. On the 28th of that month, he was transferred to the Duke of Wellington's West Riding Regiment, service number 16400. On the 18th of July 1915, his comrade and pal, Private William Robinson, also of Alsager, and serving in the same regiment, was killed, fighting on the Ypres salient and defending positions near the town of Ypres. William had only been on active service for 6 weeks. Christopher, who fought in another platoon, wrote to William's parents about his pal's death. He was hit by a bullet through the left lung on Saturday while out digging about midnight. He died about half an hour later. He just had a parcel and 1 or 2 letters. Chris was wounded on the first day of the Battle of the Somme on the 1st of July 1916 with a forearm wound and was taken to the 11th General Hospital, Camier, France. He was released back to the 2nd Battalion West Riding Regiment on the 22nd of July 1916. During his time in France, Chris wrote home regularly to his parents and also to his sister Nellie. The postcards and transcriptions of what he wrote on them are outside on the display boards if you'd like to read them. Private Christopher Dale was killed in action on the 19th of September 1916 during the Battle of the Somme. Chris was 19 years old. I understand from my grandmother that his mother would never believe that he'd been killed, as his body had not been found. She used to wait by the window, hoping to see him walking down a lane. His family had some postcards made. One is on display. His name was placed onto his grandmother's grave along with that of his father George and mother Amelia in Christ Churchyard, Alsager. His name is remembered with honour on the Thiepval Memorial picketed to those 72,191 British and South African men who died during the battles of the Somme and who have no known grave. He's also remembered in Alsager with his name on the war memorial at the corner of Sandbach Road and Ashmore's Lane. Somebody that at least one of our members has a very personal interest in.
Good morning. When we first started talking about writing for the First World War, one of the topics covered was what would the children think? What would they see? What would they hear? And as I was researching my family tree, I realised that my great-aunt Rosetta would have been 5 in 1914. So I tried to write a poem, thinking how she would write it. And this is called World War One by One. 1914. My big brother Fred is a soldier now. He has a uniform with shiny buttons and a hat. He's going to ride on the train to see the sea, then get on a ship. Oh, I should like that. Fred is going to go to war. I don't know where that is yet, because some children were hurt by Kaiser Bill. Fred says he'll be home for Christmas. You can bet. Rosie, 5. 1915. Uncle Tommy is going to France to fight. Auntie Lizzie is very sad and cries over Tommy. He says the wages are better for a soldier than working all day in the dark down the mine. Rosie, 6 years. 1916. Mummy and Daddy have been very upset. They had a paper saying that Fred is missing. Daddy says that they're not taking my boy away, so now he's going away to take the King's shilling. Mummy doesn't want Daddy to go. What about us? I heard her say. But he's going to France to find Fred for me. He said one look from him and Kaiser Bill will run away. Rosie, age 7. 1917. Grandad used to be a soldier and said, I'm going to fight. If my boys can go and do it, well then, so can I. As long as I don't tell the recruiting sergeant about my gammy leg and my wonky ankle. Rosie, aged 8 years. 1918. Grandad didn't get to be a soldier again. He went to work to make all the big gun shells. He patted each one and said, do your worst. Help my boys come back and be well. Rosetta, 9 years. 1919. Today is a very sad day in the village. Everyone is wearing something black. They've put up a big white marble cross to remember all the soldiers that didn't come back. I'm standing proudly holding Mummy's hand, staring at Daddy's, Uncle Tommy's and Fred's names, listed together as they would have wanted. They've gone, and life won't ever be the same. Rosetta, age 10. And that was in memory of my great-uncle, Fred Whitehead, who died in France in 1917, age 23, and his little sister, Rosetta Whitehead, who died in Bradwell Hospital in 1920, age 10.
This is called Nursing by Marion Leach. They did not know, I did not know. How could we possibly know? Young women, wealthy but naive, who could not understand nor see the awful outcome of war. It could not have been much worse. Patriotism, such patriots, really inbred patriots, that in our minds we knew we must support the men we loved and missed. Yet soldiers we could never be. Women in the infantry, so determined, so determined. Friends and I were so determined. Papa said our great house should be a nursing home and would provide respite for those so ill, needing only time to kill. Nursing. I became a nurse, a rich man's daughter trained to be a nurse. So much to learn, so few days to understand the basic ways.
to clean and dress a wounded head, even how to make a bed. Soldiers, wounded soldiers, more and more wounded soldiers, needing peaceful rest and sleep, some so ill they made us weep. We write letters for the blind, send them to family and friends. War is over, war is finished, our nursing over as is the war. We will look back in our musings and remember the months of nursing. Times made us knowing and mature. Will this influence our future? Thank you.
Marie has a great ability to put herself in somebody else's shoes. And on this occasion, she's standing in the shoes of a young man who goes towards the trenches for the first time. And he tells us what it's like.
Full of trepidation, we marched along the road. Our sergeant said, "It won't be long, boys, before we reach our destination." My heart was beating so fast. No one knew what to expect. As we entered the trenches, we saw it as if it was like a snake, a winding snake. In the lull of the fighting, soldiers with weapons at the ready. We were writing letters home or drinking tea, and they were very pleased to see us. "Don't worry, we'll soon get used to this," they said. The sergeant gathered the men together to give us some instructions. "Don't put your head above the parapet. There are snipers already ready to shoot anything that moves. Take care lighting cigarettes. Shield the flame. Old soldiers warned that we have the third light, and from one match to ask to be shot." He finished by saying, "We are all in this together."
In this poem, I've tried to imagine what it must have been like to be a woman during the war, and I've actually called it sex change. When factory fodder became cannon fodder, who kept the wheels of industry turning? Think the unthinkable. It would have to be women keeping the home fires burning. Plenty of skeptics doubted the wisdom of women in factories. Not a good plan. Businessmen were full of misgivings. A woman could not take the place of a man. Red ragged to a bull, which made the girls say, "If they think we can't cope, we'll show them. We can do just as well as our men did, making ammo to keep the war going." As clippies on buses and women police, they proved they were up to the task, ploughing fields, hauling coal, fighting fires. They took on these jobs and learned fast. Shame it was just for the duration. War over, back to square one. Women returned to household chores. Little thanks for a job well done. This next poem, which is called Lament for Doomed Youth, was written by Pauline, who unfortunately can't be with us this morning, so I'm reading it for her. She makes reference in her poem to the work of several war poets, while adding her own personal take on this period of history. We weep, we watch, we wait. We wonder why, when, for the crimes of the fathers, it is you who are called upon to die. You who are young and trusting. You who believe cruel, sweet, persuasive jingles contrived only to deceive. War will bring no glory for your loved ones left to grieve. We weep, we watch, we wait, as innocence marches on towards its fate. Our sad lament lies crushed by cryptic, patriotic rhetoric. We weep, We watch. We wait. While beauty, youth and valour dies, our anguished screams explode above dark and troubled foreign skies. Do not blindly take up the quarrel with the foe. Discard that ancient hatred, that blood-soaked arrow and that twisted bow. Why be coerced by potent words? If you break faith, we shall not sleep. That archaic conflict is not blindingly your faith to keep. We weep, we watch, we wait. We hear the cry, the mournful resonating silence of those who lay forever, row on row, in Flanders fields where poppies grow. We weep, we watch, we wait. It is too late. From this section is written by a gentleman called Sid Bailey. He can't be here to read it for himself today, so Vivian's going to read it for him. Sid's a very, very interesting gentleman, and in his 90-plus years has had a really interesting life. It's a shame he can't be here to tell us about it.
Hello everyone. It's my privilege to read Sid's work. Well into his mid-90s. I spoke to him last night and this morning, and he was trying his best to be here, but he's really poorly today. So he's asked me to read this and take pictures of the exhibition for him, and I'll be seeing him early next week. It's called Remembrance Sunday, and I'm sure it's something we can all relate to. The yellow leaves in Hyde Park are like a carpet spread, and in a silent Whitehall, the poppies blossom red. In distant fields of Belgium, a farmer tills his land, and far flung over Flanders, the field of crosses stand. From many a scattered belfry, the village church bells ring, and over fields of poppies, the soaring skylarks sing. The trenches now lie empty on the slopes of Vimy Ridge, and traffic flows unheeding over Arnhem's fateful bridge, while tourist buzzes thunder where once the young men strode towards the hell of Passchendaele along the Menin Road. From city, town and village they marched to meet their fate. Now a bugler sounds the last post beneath the Menin Gate. Across the fields of Europe, from Dunkirk to Loomberg Heath, the yellow leaves fall gently on the dead who sleep beneath. And yellow leaves in Hyde Park are like a carpet spread, while in a silent Whitehall, a nation mourns its dead.
when we met him last week on our way to the line. Now the soldiers he smiled at are most of them dead, and we curse him his staff for incompetent swine. He's a cheery old card, grunted Abby to Jack, as they slogged to the arrows for a rifle and pack. But he did for them both, by his plan of attack. What do you mean by this? I rapped. You dare come on parade like this? Please, sir, hold your mouth, the sergeant snapped. I takes his name, sir. Please, and then dismissed. Some days confined to camp he got for being dirty on parade. He told me afterwards the damn Ned spot was blood, his own. Well, blood is dirt, I said. Blood's dirt, he laughed, looking away far off to where his wound had bled and almost merged forever into clay. The world is washing out its stains, he said. It doesn't like our cheeks so red. Young blood's its great objection. But when we're duly whitewashed, being dead, the race will bear field marshal God's inspection. Red lips are not so red as the stained stones kissed by the English dead. Kindness of wooed and wooer seems shame to their love pure. O love, your eyes lose lure when I behold eyes blinded in my stead. Your slender attitude trembled not exquisite like limbs knife-skewed, rolling and rolling there where God seems not to care, till the fierce love thy bear cramps them in death's extreme decrepitude. Your voice sings not so soft, though even as wind murmuring through raftered loft. Your dear voice is not dear, gentle and evening clear, as theirs whom none now hear. Now earth has stopped, their piteous mouths have coughed. Heart, you were never hot, nor large, nor full like hearts made great with shot. And though your hand be pale, paler are all which trail your cross through flame and hail. Weep, you may weep, for you may touch them not. Jesus Christ, I'm it, he said, and died. Whether he vainly cursed or prayed, indeed, the bullets chirped in vain, vain, vain. Machine guns chuckled, tut, 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 and the big gun guffawed. Another sighed, oh, mother, mother, dad, then smiled at nothing, childlike, being dead. And the lofty shrapnel cloud leisurely gestured fool, and the splinters spat and tittered. My love, one moaned. Love languid seemed his mood, till slowly lowered, his whole face kissed the mud. and the bayonet's long teeth grinned. Rabbles of shells hooted and groaned, and the gas hissed. Like old beggars undersat. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched to sleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf, even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5'9", dropped behind, gas. Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling fitted the clumsy elbows just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or wine. Dim, through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If, in some smothering dreams, you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil's, sick of sin. If you could hear, as every jolt of blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori.
Thank you all very, very much. I really was lovely.
And all the girls and boys at the Kidsgrove Writers Group for putting this event on. I myself really enjoyed it because I lost an uncle in the First World War, and my mum never really got over losing a brother. Then she lost another brother in the Second World War, so she had double memories. So these are part of the memories that I have received from my mum. Thank you very much. Right, here we go. I'm upside down. It's just called Poppies. Poppies standing so tall and proud, covering this sacred ground. The souls that lying there are gone away, only their bodies left to decay. The soldiers left there, young without a care, come to our country's aid and welfare, pay the price with their health and life to save us all from hate and strife. Someone's husband, someone's sons, someone's nephews, someone's cousins, someone's friends, they all lie together where they fell together forever. Their plans and dreams are now over, now they rest with all due honour. Their lives given freely are gone, buried beneath the poppies of the sun. Thank you.
The next piece of writing that you're going to hear is from a young man who is the same age as ever so many of those soldiers who set off but never came home again. Jordan's going to read his poem called Groweth Thy Poppy.
Groweth thy poppy, let your tender petals be shown. In Flanders fields, where only war has been known, dead bodies used to cover the blood-splattered turf, but now they're gone, instead replaced by silence and kind words. Was there any need to go to war? We may have won, but men are sore, sleeping in trenches, covered in mud, and the ones who never made it would be left in their own blood. Groweth thy poppy, cover up all the dead. I find all of the fighting horrible and grotesque, from one assassination to the world on its knees, fighting for king and country and for British belief. The loss of life was tragic, it made us all cry, sitting in the trenches and wondering why. So groweth thy poppy, rise up nice and tall, where war has made my imagination feel ever so small. Groweth thy poppy, force yourself to grow, let your tender red petals be shown in Flanders fields where the war has been done.
I'm going to read, sorry, I keep forgetting to stay behind this thing. I'm going to read now something that Marion wrote, a story which encourages us to keep this period in our history alive to those born such a long time after the event. She's called it Now and Then. Peace was shattered as my son Tom and his friend Jake erupted into the kitchen. They'd been out all day at the local museum, learning about World War I, supposedly to help them in their schoolwork. Though how much 2 10-year-olds had looked and learned, I wasn't sure. Wash your hands after you've removed those dirty shoes, I instructed the boys, only to be told that soldiers in the trenches never had to bother about a bit of dirt. They considered trenches were a great idea and would dig their own in Jake's garden at the weekend. Of course, theirs would be much better than those in Belgium, being on British soil, and with a good supply of Coke and biscuits and comics. Present-day kids obviously had not quite understood the horrors of war and the trenches and the lack of anything that could possibly be considered comfort. They knew all about mud, but not in such quantities, icy cold, so slippery you could hardly stand up. Added to this was the human story. You had to stay hidden, and when the trench was full, it was claustrophobic. Men tried to eat there, write a letter, or read, rest, smoke, talk, scratch the bites, kill the rats. Try to help the wounded before they were stretchered off, and cope with the death of close friends and colleagues. For those battle-stressed, it must have been even more of a nightmare. And for officers trying to rally their troops for further fighting, what words did they use to bind the men together to continue the task? I was not there, yet I can still feel the terror of those times. Then, of course, the tanks. They were stupendous, and if only the boys could get hold of one, what fun they could have in the park. Grumpy old Mr. Smythe, the park keeper, would be unable to shoo them away, and any vicious neighbourhood dog would be sent running. Of course, grass and flower beds would be a bit worse for wear. Well, so what? The class had not been allowed into the tank on display, and to smallish children, it would have appeared a reasonable place to enter. But for grown men, it was another story. With hatches closed and wearing thick uniforms, you would soon become very hot, making you sticky and prickly. Little space to move, fresh air in a limited supply. Would feel as if he was suffocating and unable to breathe. No shock absorbers on the tanks, and the rough terrain it had to travel over made for an uncomfortable ride, and noise from the artillery was deafening. They may have helped to win the war, but they certainly weren't classifiable as fun. What did women do in the war? I asked the boys. This was followed by silence. Then Tom ventured to suggest they probably just stayed at home and looked after the children. They certainly couldn't work wearing those long dresses. Either the boys had not learned all there was to learn from a museum visit, or else the displays hadn't included the work of women during the war. Many went to work at men's jobs, including land girls, who initially volunteered and weren't paid for working, often on their own, in their own time, and no time off. Eventually, the government regulated work and women were paid. Hours were restricted a little, and they had a little training, uniforms, and time to themselves. Others went to help in hospitals at home and abroad, often very close to the soldiers fighting in the trenches and in the line of fire. Others drove ambulances, taking the wounded for treatment. Many worked in munition factories, where they did heavy work and were open to contamination from various chemicals they used in their job. All this they did as their patriotic duty. Jake started a discussion about the horses and their part in the conflict. When he had seen the marvellous theatre construction of this animal, it was very impressive. Tom thought these and their riders would be rather like knights in shining armour, undertaking heroic deeds while serving their country. Poor horses. with no choice but to be taken on frightening journeys to traumatic scenes in foreign fields, where all you had known in the past was the British countryside, where you worked and hunted or perhaps took the children for riding lessons. So very many did not return, dying in battle, whilst men decided they were outdated and not suited to modern warfare. Do you know what they did to deserters? I queried. Together, the boys shouted with too much relish, "Shot them dead!" Perhaps this was not always fair, I suggested, explaining that the soldiers were often suffering badly from post-traumatic stress disorder, known then as shell shock. However, the boys could not see this as any reason to be lenient. Deserting your post was unpatriotic. It was surely known that most were very patriotic and did not wish to be classed as mentally ill, but those at the top had to teach them a lesson and let men know what the outcome would be if they were seen to have deserted their post. Nowadays, this is seen as the wrong attitude, and many of these men, who were not named on war memorials at the time, have now had their names added. According to Jake, the rich were not affected by the war and lived in their stately homes unaffected. Do you not think that they were patriotic too, I asked them. After some consideration, they agreed that they'd let their staff go off to fight and also had to manage without the young men to run their houses in the States. But they stressed they were very rich and not much bothered about anybody else. To some extent, they were right, and yet many lost sons fighting for their country, sons whom they had expected to inherit their estates and carry on the family name. Daughters, too, often felt it their duty to help as best they could, some staying at home and collecting money to help the troops, giving their horses to help win the war, while others became nurses, at home and abroad, or volunteer ambulance drivers, VADs, close to the battlefields and in great danger. Many aristocratic families allowed part of their property to be used to nurse the returning wounded soldiers, and as convalescent homes. Many young men lived in luxurious surroundings that would have been beyond their means normally. In conclusion, from all walks of life, people helped and contributed to the winning of this war to end all wars, as it was thought at the time. What a shame we didn't learn a lesson from the experiences of those 4 years between 1914 and 1918. Thank you, Marion. That's a really imaginative way of telling us all of that. Margaret's poem tells us of the British reaction to the battlefield and to the German response to that reaction.
Die müssen verrückt sein. Brass-button commands ring out across the wilderness of no man's land, a one-time cabbage patch, where khaki-clad boys vainly dug lofted drives of artillery fire, running towards the shallow ditch where their dying brothers lie. In fading light, those with the achingly soft, smooth skin of youth appeal to images of their mothers, whose arms stretch out toward an absent son, while those with skin leathered from useful toil turn towards comrades freshly sprung from flooded trenches. No, they cry, their arms waving, seeming to push back those stalwart comrades who now follow on. "This isn't cricket," screamed the captain, getting his eye in from the dark, foul trench, where injured men sought to sleep. "No," cried the soldiers, steeped in sour memories of a commanding poster, "your country needs you," pasted onto English walls. "They must be crazy," whispered the enemy. "Die müssen verrückt sein."
In this poem, which I called Truth and Lies, The title is self-explanatory. Your country needs you, they told us. Hard to resist such a call. National pride compelled a response. Sign up and arrest, and walk tall. It will all be over by Christmas, they told us as we marched away. If we thought they were right, we were hoodwinked. Which Christmas, they omitted to say. We entered that war without knowledge of what there would be up ahead. Reality soon had us reeling. Gas, quagmire, thousands dead. Passchendaele, Wipers, the Somme, names now familiar to you. It's the war to end all wars, they told us. History has proved this untrue.
Thank you, Elaine. This is Man-Made Hell by Marie Cottrell. At the sound of the guns, with bullets flying, the whistle blows, each man knows what is expected of him. Over the top, lads, do your duty. It's like time has stopped. We're in the mire. As the smoke clears, there's the sight of the wounded and dying. Thousands of good men died this day. It makes me weep. I have survived. My heart is crying, please help us, God. Each poppy over this wounded land is a symbol of thy spirit.
It had been a good dream as far as she could recall, one of peace, where she and Jack were by the seaside and enjoying the sun and sand. She silently cursed her subconscious for placing such hopes in her mind, when her outstretched hand felt nothing but the empty side of the bed. Doris pulled back the bedsheets and slipped into her silk robe, a gift from Jack the last Christmas they spent together. She peered hopefully out of the bedroom window, as she did every morning. Perhaps one day she would see him walking up the garden pathway. But that hope faded with every morning that he wasn't there. She made a cup of tea and began the chores for the day, catching a glimpse of the daily paper. She needed to know what was happening abroad, not for curiosity, but to see if they were any closer to ending this war, this stupid war. The men had been so eager to sign up, to throw their lives away, believing they were fighting for a greater cause, when in reality it was about to collapse of treaties. Had she been wiser, more intuitive, maybe she could have stopped Jack from signing up too. Perhaps not. The pansies she had placed on the windowsill were beginning to wilt. She would need to change them soon, before the heat killed them off completely. They were Jack's favourite flowers, the ones she had planted in the garden just for him. She would pick a few every couple of weeks, just a few, and place them in a vase so he could gaze upon their beauty each morning before setting off for work. Since he had gone, she kept the tradition going, hoping he would come back to gaze upon them again. But another year was rapidly going by, and her dedication to the job was wearing thin. 1 year and 10 months, that's how long he had been gone for. She would be at the factory tomorrow, and often wondered just how much her contribution actually helped her beloved Jack. There was a knock upon the door, abrupt yet gentle. Doris composed herself. She had not been expecting company today. She walked purposefully to the door. A slight, optimistic glimmer of hope brewed inside her as she thought that it could be her beloved. She opened the door and immediately felt disappointed. It was not Jack, but merely the postman. He appeared different somehow, painted in anguish. He handed her a letter, clearly something from the front line, and without saying a word took his leave. This was very unusual behaviour from him. Usually the man would stop and have a chat with her, tell her about his wife and how she had been holding up since she became chair-bound. Yet today he was silent. Doris stared down at the letter in her hand, a feeling of dread overwhelming her. Everyone knew what this letter was. That's why the postman was so quiet. She didn't want to open it. She wanted to feign ignorance and hold out hope that Jack would walk down the pathway any minute. Carefully and slowly she opened the envelope and slid the letter out from his nest. It was from a military officer and read, "Dear Mrs. Baker, it is with our deepest sympathies that we regret to inform you of your husband's death, Corporal Jack Baker. He was a brave man who gave his life on the battlefield of the Somme and valiantly saved his men. He will be dearly missed and forever remembered as a hero. Tears welled up inside her, a heaviness clenched at her heart, suffocating her. Her legs gave way and she collapsed to the floor, unable to stand. She couldn't breathe, but she needed to just let out that undeniable scream, and when she did, the tears streamed from her eyes. She had never known pain like this before. Even physical pain couldn't compare. Accidentally, she knocked the envelope over, and a clear chink could be heard as it hit the floor. She picked it up and pulled out a large coin, one certainly big enough to fill the entire envelope. How could she have not seen it? She knew what it was. It was the death penny. A token of honour to the families left behind. She lay down upon the floor and wept continuously for hours, clutching the penny and the letter to her chest. Another morning came, and this time there were no dreams. And when Doris arose from her slumber, she didn't bother to stretch her hand out to Jack's side of the bed. She did not even go to the window to look down upon the front garden. Instead, she got herself ready for work, and there was no chance she'll be reading the papers now. But before she left the house, she happened to see the pansies on the kitchen windowsill. They were close to death yesterday, but today, well, it looked as though new life had been breathed into them. Their colours, pink and purple, were prominent. They were open in full bloom. They looked as new as the day she had picked them. But then there was no explanation for this. Maybe he was watching over her still. Maybe this was his way of saying he'd come home and will never leave her again. And for the first time in a long time, Doris smiled, and just before she left, she whispered under her breath, "Welcome home, Jack."
I've only come to this very late, and Philip has lent me a book of Sylvan Sassoon's poems, and I just thought I'd say, I remember going to visit Screen Maidlarks. When I was a child, I was taken, we went to the family to visit families, which you did in those days. We caught the bus and that's where you went. And I remember these three sisters who lived together in Brighton. And I said to Mum, why do they live together? Because that didn't seem the right thing to do. And she said, the men were all killed during the war. And I just remember being thinking a whole generation of men went. And this today is a really positive reminder of quite, what it did to the whole country. And now I'm going to try and read this. There's two poems that Philip's given me. This one I'll try to do justice to. If I were fierce and bald and short of breath, I'd live with scarlet mages at the base and speed like heroes up the line to death. You'd see me with my puffy, petulant face, guzzling and gulping in the best hotel, reading the roll of honour. Poor young chap, I'd say, I used to know his father well. Yes, we've lost heavily in this last scrap, and when the war is done and you stone dead, I'll toddle home safely and die in bed.
In this next one, Margaret's going to read to us about her grandfather. But it says at the top of this piece of writing, Rudolph Valentino. I don't know if Rudolph Valentino was her grandfather.
I think Elaine's just kind of indicated there's quite a tenuous link to the First World War. This is part of my family history. Rudolph Valentino. I never knew my other grandfather. The granddad I did know told me his own story, piecemeal, you understand, while he enclosed his rough hand around mine as we took our daily walk in order not to get under Grandma's feet while she saw to things. It was always the same route, treading the paths around Holditch Colliery, commonly dubbed the Brimbo. Grandad told us stories about the coal mine beneath our feet. They were always the same, as though he was afraid of forgetfulness. Before the onset of World War I, he had been caught up in a serious accident in his work as a collier, one in which many men had lost their lives. Time and time again he told me of how he had tried to scratch a message on coal addressed to Grandma. Despite this, he continued to carry on with his lifelong work well into the start of World War I and beyond. He did his bit, said Grandma, to keep the home fires burning, while she massaged my nose into what she believed would be a much better shape. My nose went its own way, of course it did. It certainly did its best in the matter of cementing my reputation as a nosy Parker, for that role served me well as I listened into the often tawdry gossip of my numerous aunts. In that manner, I gleaned information about my other grandfather. Not enough to provide the perfect picture, you understand, but if you like your gossip to be on the juicy side, then I will reveal that the aunt who will never be seen dead without makeup addressed her coterie and assured her coterie that grandfather had had the looks of Rudolph Valentino long before the real Rudolph set female hearts aflutter. Time and time again, he used them to his own advantage, she whispered. His job during World War I was to break horses in. His whip, she claims, still existed, and furthermore, she knew just where it was. But did she? My comfortably plump aunt, who smelled like newly baked bread, said that he had been a common bus driver before that war and earned his uncertain reputation for his ability to double declutch. And she had had it first hand that he was now working as a common groom. Can he double declutch a horse too? A horse too, asked the aunt, who had never managed to reach the height of 5 feet. At some point in the 1950s, I acquired my other grandfather's whip, along with my other grandmother's walking stick. Together, they'd stood in my horse stand for a number of years. I still have the walking stick, but alas, the whip went missing during the move of house, much like its one-time owner escaping his one and only marriage to Gran. She had had 4 brothers, 3 of whom died in battle during World War I. Approaching my 20s, I discovered that my other grandfather was indeed working as a groom. Determined to meet him, I tracked him down, and with great trepidation awaited his appearance. I could see no resemblance to Rudolph Valentino, and informed him that I was his granddaughter. He closed the door without saying a single word. I like to think it was because my nose was entirely the wrong shape.
This next poem tells of all that many soldiers sacrificed by answering their nation's call. It's just called Sacrifice. A slab of stone on which is carved a cross, a name, to mark the place a young man rests for all eternity. His hopes, his dreams, ambitions, unfulfilled. No tender kiss, no warm embrace from the girl he's known since childhood. No rings exchanged. No pledge to share their worldly goods, their lives. No son, the image of his dad. No daughter, idolising him. All this sacrificed on foreign soil. For what? Can you explain?
The song, Saturday, July 1st, 1960.
Today was the day that all the drilling was for, a tale to tell the grandchildren, their granddad in the Great War. A story of brave soldiers fighting the enemy on, of heroic deeds and medals awarded once the war was won. Forgotten then would be the fear, the rats, the rain, the mud. Old soldiers would be cast in a golden glow, as only old soldiers should. Forgotten too the orders, that with hindsight should never have been sent, from generals miles behind the front, all their old strategies spent. At 7:30 in the morning, we heard the whistles blow. "Come on, boys, over the top," said the officers. "Let's go." We climbed up and over, joining the bustling khaki throng, a line of Allied soldiers that was several miles long. But the artillery had missed their aim. The German wire still stood. So we toiled on, sometimes in single file, through the squelching mud, to find a gap in the wire that was not being quickly filled by the bodies of my comrades, shot and mercilessly killed. In my turn, I became a target, several bullets ripping through my chest. No grandchildren now for me. I am gone to take my rest. No tales from me by the fireside, no warm welcome as I return home. My only consolation on this dreadful of days, I did not die alone. Thank you.
In the next two short accounts, Marie has reminded us that animals, as well as men, were involved in this war. Kerry's going to read them for her.
This first one is called The Mascot. Sounds of gunfire all around are very frightening. A little dog, half starved, takes refuge in the trenches. Soldiers take pity on him and share their meagre rations with him. Over time, their relationship becomes close. The dog became a mascot for the men who loved and cherished him throughout the war. They called him Victory. Miraculously, at the end of the war, the little dog was reunited with his owners. And this next one is called Loyalty. I've always adored horses. I've worked with them all my adult life. To me, they are not just animals, they are my friends. Not everyone feels this way. The relationship between horse and man is fragile. To some people, a horse is no more than a slave. My heart grieves when I think what will happen to them when they go to war. The soldiers will care for them as I would, but their fate is in the hands of other men. They will be worked hard pulling gun carriages in the thick of battle, maybe even dying in the process. Even if they survive, many will be killed to provide food for the German prisoners, a harsh price to pay for their loyalty.
I'm not a hobbit. Well, how are things in heaven? I wish you'd say, because I'd like to know that you're all right. Tell me, have you found everlasting day, or been sucked in by everlasting night? For when I shut my eyes, your face shows plain. I hear you make some cheery old remark. I can rebuild you in my brain, though you've gone out patrolling in the dark. You hated tours of trenches. You were proud of nothing more than having good years to spend, longed to get home and join the careless crowd of chaps who worked in peace with time for friend. That's all washed out now, you're beyond the wire. No earthly chance can send you crawling back. You finished with machine gun fire, knocked over in a hopeless dud attack. Somehow I always thought you'd get done in, because you were so keen to live. You were all out to try and save your skin. Well, knowing how much the world had got to give, you joked at shells and talked the usual shop, stuck to your dirty job and did it fine. With Jesus Christ, when will it stop? 3 years, it's hell unless we break their line. So when they told me you'd been left for dead, I wouldn't believe them, feeling it must be true. Next week the bloody roll of honour said, wounded and missing, that's the thing to do when lads are left in shell holes dying slow, with nothing but black sky and wounds that ache, moaning for water till they know it's night, and then it's not worthwhile to awake. Goodbye, old lad. Remember me to God and tell him that our politicians swear they won't give in till Prussia's rule's been trod under the heel of England. Are you there? Yes, and the war won't end for at least 2 years. But we've got stacks of them. I'm blind with tears, staring into the dark. Cheerio, I wish they'd killed you in a decent show.
This poem is another of Sid Bailey's poems, and is called In Memoriam. There's a breathless hush in the streets tonight, and death rains down from overhead. A shriek, a crash, and a blinding light. A cloud of dust, and the mangled dead lit by the glare of many a fire. A hungry tongue or a sheet of flame, the mighty blazing funeral pyre of those who played the ghastly game. For them, no more on a winter's night, when snowflakes fall and the daylight dies, shall the blazing coal in the hearth burn bright, and Christmas bells ring through the skies. They fought with death through hours of hell, choked by the dust and scorched with flame, till in the ruined streets they fell, while others carried on the game. The dust and the wreckage is sodden red, red with the blood of a hero band who swelled the ranks of the slaughtered dead and gave their lives to save their land. But the god of war has cast the die. There's not a chance of eternal fame. But they faced death, steadfast to the last, and to the end, they played the game.
You'll be pleased to know Gareth Malone's left the building. Okay. Now you notice on your sheets there are 10 songs. Whether we do all 10 is another matter. But you're not doing more than one verse. If I think the song might be a little unfamiliar, I will play it through first. Will you sing it as well, Mark? You don't want that. So, we're going to start with number 1, and we'll plough through and see how it goes. All right? Now, Jordan is going to bring you in. I'm going to tip the wink, and he's going to bring you in. Okay, so you're going to listen to a bit of an introduction to each one. If it's unfamiliar, I'm going to play through first and then you come in. But just watch Jordan. Okay?
The first one is Pack Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag.
Smile, smile.
today's events. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being here with you. Before you leave, if you haven't put anything in our charity bucket, I really would be grateful if you could manage to put just a little something in. Thanks ever so much indeed. Bye-bye.
Elaine's just dismissed us, and I think really we ought to thank her and the Writers Group for putting this on. It's been a really interesting day, and I want to thank everybody that's put it on, especially, I know some of the hard work that Elaine's put into it. So,